Hey everyone, my name is John, or Johnny Chiduka on YouTube, and welcome to the SchizoSocial podcast. We have a group of people that are from a Discord server online, and it's called the SchizoSocial group, and we just wanted to make a podcast about what it's like to have schizoaffective and schizophrenic mental illnesses, and how we as a community support each other while navigating life with said mental illnesses. We're going to do some introductions. There's a couple of us here, and we're just going to share with y'all our experiences with schizophrenic and schizoaffective disorders, and hopefully create some awareness and some show the humanity behind individuals who have these kinds of illnesses, because there's a lot of stigma behind them, and it's important that we inform and educate people that, number one, that these illnesses are illnesses, they're medical illnesses, and number two, that we are human and we struggle, and the way we struggle is important in how we deal with these. So, without further ado, I'm gonna introduce everyone by order of the questions I'm about to ask. So, introduce yourself based on just what your name is, where you're from, what your diagnosis is, and your interests. So, let's start with Danny. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Danny. You can call me Birdie. I am from DC, and I have a lot of disorders. But in simple, I have schizoaffective bipolar type, which is schizophrenia and bipolar, and I have ADHD.
Oh, what kind of stuff do you like to do, Danny?
I like reading. I like playing piano. Just chilling with friends.
How long have you played piano?
Oh, I played piano since I was like about 12. I'm self-taught.
So you're Mozart, basically.
Well, I mean, yeah, I compose music and all of that. Oh, that's awesome. So, yeah.
Awesome. Next we have Jason. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, hi. I'm Jason. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Twin Cities area suburb, and I have schizophrenia uncategorized schizophrenia.
What do you like to do, Jason?
I like my time at home. I have a dog that I take care of, and she's my companion specialist. I have a prescription for her, so I take really good care of her. And we're best friends. And then I like to go out in the community and go grocery shopping, and and get the things I need for the house for every couple weeks. And I'm basically a homebody because of my situation I'm in, having one leg. It's hard to get out unless I have my power wheelchair.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for sharing, Jason. Ellie. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell the world a little bit about who you are.
It is I, Ellie. Yeah, I just go by Ellie. I'm 23. I'm from Ohio. I was diagnosed as schizoaffective bipolar type, and I have ADHD too, just like Danny.
What do you like to do, Ellie?
I don't really get up to much at all. I have a few interests in things like makeup and learning languages and music and stuff like that, but really I don't get up to much.
Gotcha. But you like playing video games, right?
Sometimes.
Gotcha. Okay, my name is John, and I am 28. I'm from Texas, otherwise known as the greatest country in the world. I'm kidding. And I have schizoaffective bipolar type, just like Danny and Ellie. I also have OCD, which has been a big part of my life very much recently. But in my interests, I like to practice martial arts. If you don't know me from this channel, you already know. Or if you already know me from this channel, you know that I like to do martial arts. I like to do judo, jujitsu. I have a blue belt in jujitsu and a green belt in judo. And it's been really good, practicing the martial arts. It helps my mental health. I like making art. I like doing graphic design. And like playing video games. I like spending time with friends and just being healthy in general. So, Simon, introduce the world who you are.
Hello, I'm Simon. I live in the DC area. I'm 42, about to be 43. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I like playing video games as well, listening to music, especially weird novel music.
Yeah, me and Simon, we play a lot of Overwatch together. It's a good time. He's a good teammate and doesn't overextend himself and get killed all the time. So
my name's Simon, and I like long walks on the beach.
No, you already answered that question. So, Paul, tell us, who the heck are you?
Good Lord, where do I start? Okay, so I'm Paul. I live in the UK in a city called Leicester. Or as Simon would like to say, our Paul from Leicester. So, Mike, I was diagnosed in 2022 with paranoid schizophrenia, which I've had since 1999. I don't just have that at the minute, though. I have a few physical conditions, certainly not on a par with other people in this chat. But I have mobility issues, but anyway, stuff that I'm into more recently, gaming I've gotten into because I've found my attention span, because of either my meds or the fact that I don't like saying this, but it's a fact that I've done illicit drugs, and that's in my past. My memory is very poor. So it lends itself to video games very well. But yeah, no, I also, when I can do, like to read bits and bobs of stuff. I live in a city, so it's good for getting out and about. Yeah, I don't know what else I can add to that.
You have a Steam Deck.
I have a Steam Deck.
Yes, the supercomputer of video games.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Would you say it's the most superior of the gaming devices?
In terms of a handheld device, I've never come across anything quite so incredible. Yeah.
Nice.
Careful. Every subsequent release of the Xbox is the most powerful gaming console in the world, and they said that about the Xbox One.
Okay,
this podcast was brought to you by Steam Deck.
This podcast is sponsored by Steam.
Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends. Okay, so we've introduced ourselves, and so we're gonna start talking about some questions and some topics about our experience with mental illness, and also, so the first question is, I'm gonna start with Danny, but we'll chime in every now and then. Danny, for you, what is SchizoSocial? How did you find it, and what does it mean to you in your journey with mental illness?
So SchizoSocial is basically like, a place where all hoes with that are crazy get to hang out in, like we're hot and crazy, like, when it gets like heated up.
What is actually SchizoSocial? What is it? Tell us what it is.
It's a place for people who are schizophrenic or have any sort of psychotic disorder, like bipolar, can like hang out in, and it really means a lot, because like in the real world, you don't really, get to interact with people who have, the same kind of mental illnesses, or at least like they're keeping it down because like they're too scared to be open about it.
Yeah. So to clarify, SchizoSocial is a Discord server, which is, if you don't know what Discord is, you've been living under a rock. I'm sorry. And so SchizoSocial is a Discord server where people with schizophrenic and schizoaffective mental illnesses come together, find community, talk about common interests, help each other, support each other, and it's a good place. And do any of you all want to chime in on what your experience with SchizoSocial is and how it has helped you?
Gives me a place to connect to other people, honestly.
Yeah.
One of my biggest outlets currently, in form of just social activity or mental support.
Do you find it hard to find that kind of support outside of the server, Ellie?
I don't really go anywhere except for work, so yeah, we'll say yes.
Yeah, for me, it was, so I live with my parents, and they do their own thing. My mom watches K-dramas all the time, and she's just happy with my cat. And my dad works, and so I don't have a car, I don't have a license, and so I'm stuck at home until I do jujitsu each day. And so it gives me a place to hang out with people, help people, be a little bit outside of myself, and support and be around people who like know what it's like to suffer from this illness, because it is a lot. It is a lot. So it's been very good for each one of us to like experience that kind of support. And even we'll talk to each other whenever we're down or having a hard time, and it creates a lot of good conversations. It creates a lot of good dynamics between us, and it just makes us feel honestly loved and supported. Does anyone else have anything to say about SchizoSocial?
Go on, Simon.
Everybody's already said everything I think that matters to me. It's just having some place, that's as cheap as free.
Paul, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, this is probably going to be an echo chamber amongst all nearly 500 of us in SchizoSocial, is that I have a place where I have friends. I don't have many friends. Well, I actually don't have any friends that I can visit locally in the real world. I have friends that I've gathered over the years who I'd speak to over the phone. But SchizoSocial, when we organised this, when this was organised as a server, I never believed that it would reach this level of impact that it's had. I'm ever so
A lot of good people.
so many good people on there, and if you're in trouble, there's always someone, if you're in there, that can either calm you down, or you'll just be able to talk about anything. It could be like, I know Jason likes his football, and Ellie likes being part of the dynamic duo, and no, it's cool. In a nutshell, it's given me a life.
Awesome.
However synthetic that may be, it has given me a life outside my comfort zone, but a lot of the time. But yes,
that's awesome. So we'll move on to the next question, and this question is first for Jason. What are schizophrenic disorders, and what has your experience been with dealing with disorders? And there's another question I want to add, because Jason has a physical disability that he'll explain in further detail, and how that affects him. So, if Jason, you have the floor, man.
Oh, okay, thanks. Let's start with, what is schizophrenia? As far as I know, there's a few different ideas. It could be a neurological disorder where your neurons are firing in every which direction, and or it could be a thought disorder. They don't really know how it comes on, or why it doesn't go away, or why people have it for life, and why there's no cure for it. It's kind of a mystery of a diagnosis. I personally enjoy the time I spend with other schizophrenics, because before I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, I thought all schizophrenics were crazy and living on the streets. That's not true. That's not true at all. I met some downright fine people in SchizoSocial. And, like my dad says, I'm all messed up in the head, but I got good intent.
Right.
That's what counts. Being a good person and saying to the next person who comes in, you're not the newcomer anymore. You don't have to show people who you are. You can just be yourself.
Right.
And it's important to make people feel accepted. And with schizophrenics, we don't feel accepted too often in society.
Right.
So
That's right.
So Jason, can you tell us a little bit about your experience? Like, what kind of symptoms you've experienced with your schizophrenia, and then you can answer the question about schizophrenia with your physical disability.
Yeah, I have tactile hallucinations, feeling like I'm being shot, and it's quite often I feel in the head and body, right now in the knees when I'm talking. But then there's paranoia. Paranoia is being afraid of telling people what you're going through. A lot of schizophrenics suffer from that because they don't tell their doctors. They try to hide it, what they're going through. And it could be just as simple as a med adjustment for the patient. But I think that's the answer to that question.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your physical disability and how it affects your schizophrenia?
Yes, and here it is. Here it is. They don't make virtuality machines that are comparable for schizophrenic to use, because you have to put the paddles on the ground.
Wait,
and
what?
A lot of people, well, to calibrate the machine at the beginning.
Wait, what are you talking about?
It's making sense.
You have to put the handles on the ground.
Oh, wait. So you
have to crouch down and everything when you're sitting in a wheelchair.
Oh, gotcha.
And then you have to stand up, and it doesn't calibrate. It won't calibrate in a wheelchair because you would rather put the controls on the desk for being down, but then you're way down low, crouching all the time.
Right. So, okay. Well, thank you, Jason.
There's my gripe against, but I'm in a wheelchair.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I can't do is use virtuality helmets because I'm in a wheelchair.
Serious. So I thought you were joking. I apologize.
No, it's not serious. It's non-using.
Yeah, you can't use them if you're in a wheelchair because you got to calibrate them beforehand.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
And it'd be too hard to do.
Yeah.
And so, but I get around in a power wheelchair, and I have a manual wheelchair, and I have a dog that's my companion specialist.
Right.
It's awfully lonely around here in the winter. I'll be honest with you, it gets downright cold and oppressive.
Right.
And come around February, you need that warmth of just something, of a small dog or a cat, something that you can take care of, or a plant. You start with a plant. If you can keep it alive for a year, then you go to an animal. Then if you keep that alive for a year, then you go try to find a girl to date.
Yeah.
And if you can keep her alive for a couple.
Actually, on that point, I thought I'd just quickly chime in with. how my social anxiety, which is severe in the real world, is way less now in the real world because of this place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know whether anyone
I'm
else
less
gets them.
afraid. I'm less afraid to talk about my mental illness. I mean, I'm always like talking about my mental illness like left and right, but I'm less afraid and I'm more confident in my general demeanor because I have friends that make me feel loved, make me feel appreciated, and just know. I mean, like I just joined the server recently, very recently, and I just wanted to pour my energy and soul and heart into the server because I get it. We all get it. We all understand what it's like to have this kind of, this hell in their lives, and we just want other people to not suffer as well. So, um, it gives me this confidence to stand up for myself and to stand up for my disorder because as an Asian American, uh, we don't talk about mental illness. Uh, I mean, I've experienced. So I have schizoaffective, and I've experienced different symptoms and whatever. But nothing is as alienating as the cultural stigma of being an Asian or Asian American and having this mental illness. Because in Korea and a lot of Asian countries, mental illness doesn't exist. Like I've been in hospitals for psychiatric reasons 100 plus times, and I never see Asian people there. And I know there's Asian people with schizophrenia. It's not like just because like they're not there doesn't mean they don't suffer. And so they're usually outcasted. They commit suicide. They're treated terribly. They don't have resources, and so it's really important for people to know that like it affects. There's a cultural aspect, cultural subtext to dealing with schizophrenia, dealing with schizoaffective because it affects people. Like I think for me the biggest thing that made me happy whenever I live in Houston, Texas, is seeing Asians in the hospital. That made me feel like I wasn't alone, more than just seeing other people with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorders. So there's that. So
Yeah, a lot of people, they say like, "Oh, it's all in your head," and I always say, that's the point. Like, it is in my head. There's actual. If you looked at actual brain scans, you see that like people who have schizophrenia, their brains are wired differently, and all that. The people without schizophrenia, so it's like just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there.
right. Awesome. So we're gonna go to the next question, and this question is first for Ellie. What would you want people to know and be aware of about schizophrenic and schizoaffective disorders? You can be as broad or as specific as you want to be.
I thought about this question for a little bit, and the main thing that came to me is really, the normality of seemingly the normality of all the people in this server that I interact with on an almost daily basis. We all have our problems, on daily, weekly basis, whatever, small problems, big problems. But everybody that I interact with to some degree is like, a chill person, like quote unquote normal person. It's not like we're all mad lunatics, like I don't think a lot of people realize that about schizophrenia. A lot of people are kind of, I want to say, sheltered to what schizophrenia and the schizophrenia spectrum illnesses are, and they don't understand what it is. But a lot of us are still the same people. Like, we're not that different,
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I want people to know that we're just. I mean, it's just like what Ellie was saying. We're human. Like we're not crazy. We're not someone to be outcasted. We're sensitive people. We like art. We like music. We like making dirty jokes. Like we're just normal people. Like
there is a level beyond, like, most of us here are kind of I don't know if the right term for it is remission, but you know, people here, most of us are medicated and have some kind of treatment plan in place to keep us on the straight and narrow path. But you know, there are people who need help, and those people shouldn't be ignored either. Those people are, you know, like, they need help is what I'm trying to say.
right. Does anyone else have anything to say about this question?
I think Ellie hinted at a thought that I've had before, which is like the tendency to hear a word like schizophrenic and immediately imagine like the only thing that you've ever heard about being, you know, like the stark raving mad, you know, animal that lives in the cave or whatever. It's a problem with education. And the thing that a person could do if they wanted to help is just read up on it.
Yeah, for sure.
They would see that schizophrenia is a kind of an antiquated diagnosis, and as Jason said, nobody knows much about it. And you can exhibit extreme symptoms, and those people are typically the ones that can't do a lot of what we do in the server. They're under very special care, and then there's the low end of the spectrum, and you might not even know, you know, that you could spend your whole life just assuming everyone else thought the same way and not even mention it and fly right under the radar. And that's what's really important, I think, about what Ellie said is, you know, learn more about it and don't assume that you're the ambassador of normaldom. You know, everybody's got something.
Right.
I also think it's important to mention that, like, schizophrenia isn't something that can be reasoned with. Like, you can't cure someone by proving that their beliefs are wrong, you know, like, because, like, as mentioned before, it's like a neurological thing, you know, so, like, you know, if, you know, they're having delusions about one thing, even if you were to, quote-unquote, like, prove them wrong, they're still going to be delusional about other things.
Right.
Even if you can manage to disprove someone's delusions, like if they're schizophrenic, not if, like, you know, they're just going to latch on to something else.
Or
addressing
they're going to get worse because they're going to feel affronted by your questioning their views, which I've experienced in work. When I used to work as a peer advocate, it's one of the holy rules that you never question someone's beliefs as in, like, you don't get me wrong, you don't go on a flight of fancy with them and explore what their delusions might be, but you never question them about their delusions.
Right.
What you can do is clarify and try and insert some solidity to what is quite a fluid and fickle what the mind can do, but questioning it is not going to get you anywhere with someone. I don't think this applies really to most of us here, because I think we've almost gone through an automatic filter of high functioning yet suffering, certainly people with schizophrenia. So I don't think that would apply here, but for someone elsewhere, it's you really shouldn't question what's a schizophrenic's beliefs. Questioning, it's not the right word. Challenging. You shouldn't be challenging their beliefs.
You should.
That's my opinion.
You should just listen and be empathetic.
Yeah.
And just have an open ear, because what they're going, if someone's paranoid or delusional or whatever, I think the most important thing is just they want to feel heard, because they're scared.
Yeah.
They're not just telling you a lie because they want to lie. Their perception of reality is so distorted that they feel scared. And the fact that they're even talking to you means that they want someone to, like, not help them, like, disprove it, but help them feel heard. And so what you can in my experience, whenever I talk to people about schizophrenia and they're going through something, I just help them feel heard, and they give them the choice and empower them to figure out, is this delusion real or not. And if they are able to get to that place, that's awesome. If they're not, that's okay too, because it's not about proving what's wrong. It's about making them feel safe and making them feel heard. So
bang on, absolutely.
Yeah. So the question I'm gonna answer is, what helps you as someone with mental illness, and what tools and tips you have someone who has just been recently diagnosed? So for me, martial arts is a huge part of my life because it helps me to express in a physical outlet all the psychosis that I have. I have huge issues with doubt and insecurity and shame and guilt over the things I've done in my life. I've talked about some of the things that have happened to me on this channel. I have 2 felonies. I've done some pretty crazy stuff. And jiu-jitsu gives me an opportunity to get myself back. I nearly left a gym, nearly quit jiu-jitsu because I was experiencing toxic behavior and toxic, my instructor wasn't being supportive of my mental health, and I didn't feel safe anymore. Like, how can you do jiu-jitsu if you don't feel emotionally safe, right? How can you do a martial art where you're almost killing people and you don't feel safe? And I just couldn't do it. And so jiu-jitsu and judo and martial arts has given me an outlet where I can feel safe. And that's important in regards to when you're going through schizophrenic disorder, is to feel safe. Have some place you can feel safe, because for most of us, if not all of us, don't feel safe in the world because of our paranoia, because of our delusions, because of our psychosis. And so martial arts and having an outlet where you can be around people, it really helps. Another thing that helps is grounding exercises. I drill this into like myself and anyone I talk to about if they're having a hard time. There's deep breathing exercise. There's mindfulness. My favorite one is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise.
Yes, I love that one.
It's so good. It's you when you're having trouble grounding yourself. You think of 5 things. So it's best if you verbalize, like, okay, I see this empty water bottle. So you have 5 things you see, 4 things you touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. And that really helps with grounding yourself. Like sometimes also when I was younger, whenever I was really stressed out and I would run cold water over my hands, and that would just make me feel safe. It's sort of weird to think about, but
I think it's a temperature thing. It's a sensory thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of shocks the system. It's like, oh crap.
Just tells you like, hey, you're here, you're alive, you're fine.
Personally, I I gotta say, like, I feel really safe when I'm with my pieces, with my guns. Nobody can get me.
These guns.
Pow, pow, pow.
I didn't know you had guns, Danny.
No, I don't. But I'm schizophrenic. I can't buy guns.
Okay, you were joking. Okay, my bad. Does anyone else have any like tips for someone? Let's say, does anyone have tips for someone who has just been diagnosed? Like, what if you're just been diagnosed? What tips do you have for someone to ground themselves and to deal with their schizophrenic or schizoaffective disorders?
I gotta say, like, get on medication.
Yeah,
sure.
A
lot of people neglect that because they're like, oh, I don't want to be fat and this and that, but like, medication has changed my life, and it didn't happen overnight, where everything changed. Like, it took like about a year, for me to get to where I am, where I virtually don't really have any symptoms anymore of schizophrenia, and I know it doesn't work the same for everyone, but like, you know, medication helps a lot, you know, and if a medication doesn't work for you, just keep looking, you know, like, because
there's a lot of medications out there.
Yeah.
So awesome.
I think it's important to not focus too heavily, not to put too much weight on having the diagnosis, because having that in the back of your mind, it can like psych you out and make you like anxious or more paranoid. It might increase your symptoms, or you know, do something that you can't really predict. And so I think it's just important to try to come to terms in your own way with having a diagnosis, and then not letting it like constantly drag on you.
I thoroughly agree with Ellie's advice to not focus on diagnosis, because I mean, that's all it is. It's someone else called you a thing, and you know everything about yourself that anyone could know, right?
Right.
I've been called lots of things. I've been
I got my diagnosis very late, and it was only because, I don't know, maybe it was stress related. Something happened. I mean, this was right around COVID, so I'm sure that had some part to play. But I'd lived my basically 40 years of my life experiencing those things and thinking the way that I do with no problem. You know, like, people are generally intelligent. They see how people operate. They listen to what people say. They you know, you learn how to sort of navigate the world. And it's nothing that, you know, it's not like a special gift. Everyone can do that. When you get a diagnosis like that, if you focus on it, you can kind of fall down a rabbit hole, you know, where you start to question everything that ever happened, you know, then you start to doubt the experiences that you've had. And that's just like, that's a human problem. That's like an existential thing, right? So any advice I think you could give someone would be the same advice you would give to a young person becoming an adult, you know, like, you know, it's up to you. I don't know what I am. I don't know what I want to be. It's like, you can be anything you want to do, you know?
Right. Awesome.
It's not a limit.
Go ahead, Ellie.
It's not a limit.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a superpower.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, I wouldn't.
It's not a limit.
If I would like to add, like, you know, I know that, you know, it's not for everyone, you know, and that it could be, you know, it could go down the wrong path and some people, but like, I do feel like being religious, you know, has helped me a lot. You know, like, knowing that there's a higher power, you know, and knowing that, you know, like, you know, I'm gonna be in a good place in the end, you know, like, giving meaning to my suffering, you know, really helps. Yeah. You know, because I feel like without that, like, you go into a really deep, dark place, you know, where you feel like, you know, it's all for nothing. Yeah, you know, but
I would say also that, like, sort of along what Danny is saying, it's like, I think she touched on this, but find stuff to fill your life with purpose. Because purpose isn't this like just this grandiose thing that just happens to you. Purpose is something that you work towards, and you fill your life up with different things. You have family, friends, hobbies, interests, maybe a partner, helping people. Like, you have all these different things. Like, you know, the world is filled with countless things that you can fill your time with, whether it be good or bad. It's up to you to make the decision on, how do I create meaning with this in my life? So we when you're born with schizophrenia or schizoaffective, it's not like you had a choice to have it. You can't just think it away. But what you can do is empower yourself to do things with your life so that you can have a successful life. So
Yeah.
the next question is for Simon. The question is, what do you think can and should be done in expanding the availability and quality of mental health infrastructure?
It's that's a huge question, and if I had one answer that could fix all of that, I think I'd die happy or immediately be president of the world or something. It's a huge issue, and it's been an issue for a long time. I can't really speak to how available it is in other parts of the world. As you mentioned before, there are these cultural stigmata attached to mental illness, which not only prevents availability of help, but also discourages people from seeking it. And I don't think that it's specific to one area. There's always been a sort of bit of negative connotation, attached to things like that. I think it's a two-party problem, right? And I've already labeled them. It's have people available that are willing to help, meaning like whatever institution provides that help, whether it be local government or federal government, increase that, make it as common as a general practitioner. Even CVS, you can walk into CVS and get treated for a sickness or a sprain. They have those little rooms at the back, right? Getting physical help is as easy as like getting gas. So that's one side of it. The other is removing the stigma, and that can be a cultural movement or it can be a personal decision. Just realize that doesn't matter. Like, if you care about negative impacts from being who you are, then you're already worried about being short or not having pretty hair or your teeth aren't straight enough or your nose is too big. That's a fundamental issue that I think a mature person has overcome. So if a mature person is suddenly diagnosed with something like schizophrenia or OCD or something that could be debilitating, they would make no bones about seeking professional help because they are who they are, whether you like it or not.
Right.
I was just going to add, if I can.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like the word schizophrenia. I don't like the word schizophrenic. I don't like the word schizoaffective. I think we're the last turkeys in the shop to be bought and sold off and changed into a different nomenclature. I don't like the fact that I don't have any bones with people with bipolar, but people have a better perception of bipolar simply because of the word bipolar. It's less loaded with negative ideas from the media. If they could only change the word schizophrenia, I'd be a much happier man.
Wow.
That's all what I don't.
That being said, if you remove the definition of schizophrenia from schizophrenia, or at least from the schizo part, I love that word schizo. just as a word. I love it.
I feel like it should be changed to crazy bitch disorder. Like one thing that kind of ticks me off, is how, like when I'm talking about like my psychotic episodes and I say, oh man, I was crazy. People are like, no, I don't think you were crazy. When they say that to me, it kind of, feels like they're taking away, like what I was like going through.
They're taking away your experience.
Yeah. And when you're saying I wasn't crazy, then what was I? Crazy has like, bad connotations, but I mean, I don't know, like, telling myself, I was crazy was like one way I could stay grounded,
Wow.
Okay. And as I mentioned before, like, like my tips, they don't go for everyone. But I know I'm going to be I know I'm very controversial for saying this already.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Keep going.
Yeah. But,
I guess maybe it just helps you kind of remove yourself from the aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're you, and you're great. And then sometimes you're a little crazy. Sometimes everybody gets a little crazy.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's interesting is that everyone can be a little bit crazy. Like, it's not like just because you're born in a certain environment or just because you're doing this or doing that or you have this illness or you don't have this illness doesn't mean that you are not capable of experiencing intense suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody can experience hallucinations at different points in their life, different stresses, especially like death of a loved one, for example, grieving a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like I think in culture, maybe this is more of American notion, but there's this idea that like we have to be put together all the time, and that's putting a lot of stress on people. Like especially during COVID, like nurses and doctors and caretakers and all these people had to be put together all the time, and they broke down. They totally broke down, and we can't blame them for breaking down or teachers, because it's like, what do you expect? So why would you expect anything else different from someone who's going through schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder? It's that there's a double standard there of like, why should I be treated differently for having schizophrenic or schizoaffective than, let's say, someone who's stressed out from the demand and the frustration and the suffering of COVID. So yeah. Jason, do you have anything to add to this?
No.
Okay. I was just making
Just try
sure.
to be. I just try to live a humble life. I don't say humble too often.
Yeah.
I don't like that. That's a cop out to me. Humility isn't what's spoken; it's what's not spoken.
Right.
True humility is what's not spoken.
Gotcha. So our last question is for Paul, and I think Paul is very apt, very appropriate of answering this question because he is an encouraging man. What words of encouragement do you have for people who are struggling with schizoaffective and schizophrenic disorders?
I think getting on a level or on a register with them that they feel comfortable with, so that you're not patronizing them, so that you're not feeling in yourself some form of superiority when you're talking to a fellow human being who's going through what you've gone through, and maybe mentally taking a few steps back in your life and thinking that was me, and then with that knowledge plow forward and basically, I guess, connecting with the person in an honest fashion and using your own past experience to highlight to them that it's fine that you're going through this. It's not, this is, you have a condition where you should not feel guilty about how you feel, because this is something that affects at least one person in 100, and that's a massive statistic. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I also think, basically, or just alluded to, I guess, just lay your cards out on the table. I've had this, I've struggled with that, and they might start thinking, oh yeah, I feel a bit. I've experienced that as well. I can understand that. Yeah. So you bring your own life experience to the fore, as it were, and that's a good thing to use. I mean, when I've been a peer advocate on psychiatric wards, and the first thing that they will take on very quickly is any past experiences that you've had that have something in common with what they've got. And it can be very cathartic for both yourself, but mainly for the other person.
Right.
That's just a few ideas, but yeah.
Does anyone else have words of encouragement?
Keep going.
Keep strong.
Yeah.
Just keep.
I feel like this is for the people who don't have schizophrenia when I say this, but I think one thing I could say is just to stick with them, because like that'll really mean a lot to them if you stick around, because a lot of people who go through psychotic disorders, like when they're going through their episodes, they lose a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
my mother described being literally bereaved, going through bereavement when I was first ill. She felt like she lost her son, and that's gone full circle now because we're very close, But yeah, people will abandon you if you have these disorders. You get to know who are your friends and who are not your friends pretty quickly in life.
Yeah,
with this stuff.
And it really humbles you too. Like, I don't think I've ever really met anyone on this Discord server, that isn't a humble person. Like they really, like, people really try to get down on each other's level and try to understand each other. And that's really appreciated about our community,
I would say it's okay to be difficult. It's not okay to make choices that lead to destructive behaviors. That's not what I'm saying. Sometimes it's okay to be a little bit difficult. Sometimes it's okay to be a lot. Sometimes it's okay to not know what to do and to be stuck, because schizoaffective and schizophrenia are not easy disorders. They're probably one of the more intense disorders out there for mental health, and people have trouble dealing with that because it's a lot. But just because you're giving your permission, you're giving yourself permission to be a lot, doesn't mean that you don't deserve love and support and validity and just humanity. You have that. Like, part of humanity, being human, is suffering. That's a huge part of it. And through support, through love, through enduring and persevering, we can overcome. And that's what if you ever feel like you need a word to empower you, for me, overcoming is my favorite word in the entire dictionary, because it's for people who have suffered so much but are determined not to give up. And some people lose the fight. That's the thing. Some people lose the fight to the system, to the legal system, or to the psychiatric system, or maybe they lose their battle with suicide. We had a member of our Discord server pass away recently, and we don't really know what happened to that person. But people lose, and so that should give you the fire to keep fighting. It's not going to be easy, but you don't have to do it alone. So, does anyone else have any words of encouragement before we end the podcast?
Learn to forgive yourself, because it's hard living life. You make mistakes, but you don't want to go through life being bitter and regretting everything. Learning to protect yourself is very important, especially if you have mental illness.
Right.
I'm glad you said that. It's hugely important. And also, after Johnny's fire speech, my advice was going to be cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war.
Awesome. So that's welcome to SchizoSocial. If you are someone who is schizophrenic, and schizoaffective, and you're looking for a community, we welcome you with open arms. I'm going to put a link in the description for our Discord server, if that's all right with you, Paul.
Absolutely.
So if you want to join our community, we're not perfect. We're not always put together, but we are genuine and we are wanting to get better. I'm glad we did this podcast because Danny suggested it before I was in the server, but we're actually doing it now, and we're gonna continue to do this and talk about different topics, about mental health and our experience with mental health and everything. And I just want to thank, first of all, each one of you, our panel of schizophrenics, for taking the time out of your day, whether it's busy or not, to talk about this kind of stuff, because it's important that we're doing this. So I just want to say, to Paul, Simon, Ellie, Danny, Jason, thank you for being a part of this project. And I look forward to, doing more of these with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, my friend Johnny, for hosting this. It's wonderful. It's really good.
So that's the end of the podcast. Thank you so much. Smash that like button. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for watching. We will be making these podcasts probably once every 2 weeks, just so that we have enough time to set everything up, and we don't want to flood you with content really quick. So from SchizoSocial here, thank you so much. Stay strong and hope you have a wonderful day. See you.